Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. And in this video, I kind of wanted to go over my second mock draft of the Giants. Because first one was before free agency, and now after free agency, the team changed quite a bit, and so did my mock draft. So I kind of wanted to update it and tell you guys exactly what I think the Giants will do in the draft. So in round one, pick 25, I have the Giants selecting Deonte Banks, cornerback out of Maryland. So we know with the Giants, I think one of the bigger needs is quarterback, especially like depth of the position. We know outside of Adoree Jackson, I don't think, we have the best quarterbacks in the world, to say the least. And Adoree Jackson is also someone who has an injury history. He's a little bit of an injury-prone player. So I do think that investing in the position is a big need for the Giants. And I think, Deonte Banks is someone who's a very good prospect, in my opinion, someone who can fit into the team very well. I think he fits in the scheme very well because Deonte Banks, he's someone who excels in press man coverage, which is exactly what he's going to do with the Giants. With Wink, and all his blitz heavy schemes, exotic schemes, things of that nature. You play a mono man coverage. When you blitz a lot, you're going to put your cornerbacks on islands and say, just cover the guy in front of you. Don't let him get open. And I think Deonte Banks, that's exactly what he's best at. I think he has all the tools. He has a good technique in man coverage, as well as he's also a very good athlete with a good size as well. He ran a 4.35 40 at the combine, and he's as well he's 6 foot, 195 200 pounds. So I think he has all the measurables as well, and I think he's gonna be a very good prospect. Very good cornerback at the next level. I think he's also he's a very good tackler as well, which I think is very good. Cornerbacks aren't always the best tacklers in the world, but he's very good at that. But so a couple things with him is like some downsides kind of things is that even though he is good at tackling, he isn't the best at coming off blocks. So I think block shedding. So I think his upside as a run defender maybe isn't the best, but I do think that's something that can be worked on. Block shedding, something that can be taught and improved on. Also, he's also his own. Even though he excels at man coverage, I think he's pretty good at zone. But it's definitely not his strong suit. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to matter as much because scheme-wise, you're playing a lot more man. And then Deonte Banks, he has good ball skills. He has a lot of pass breakups, but that's the thing. He just pass breakups. It doesn't turn interception opportunities into actual interceptions. He usually just swats the ball away, which isn't the biggest deal. But you would like some more interceptions. But yeah, overall, I think Deonte Banks, very good prospect, should fit the Giants seamlessly. So in round 2, pick 57, I have the Giants selecting Joe Tippmann, center out of Wisconsin. So when it comes strictly to the center position, the Giants had a very awful free agency. For those who don't know, we lost both Jon Feliciano and Nick Gates. And don't get me wrong, I don't think either of them were that good, to be honest with you. But at the same time, you need a center, and we currently don't have one. So I expect the Giants to use a very early draft pick, day 1, but most likely day 2 pick on a center. And I think, that's why I have them in this pick, taking Joe Tippmann, who I think is a prospect who's going to be able to come in and actually start at the center position day 1. So I think the biggest takeaway with Joe Tippmann is just that he's just very athletic for a center. It's not very often you see center prospects who have an ability to be very good pulling, I think he's someone who can do that. He's someone, with the athleticism to, snap the ball, go on pull, and just run some people over, which, who doesn't love the big hog mollies up front, just running dudes over? Because I know that's what I like watching that. I think that's very exciting, very fun. And yeah, I think Joe Tippmann, he's someone who can, he's also a very smart player. He can, call adjustments and things like that in the line, which is also very important for the centers. I don't think he has very big, weaknesses. I don't think he has, anything that I think is going to be a major issue at the next level. Anything, obviously, when I say big issue, anything that's going to cause him to be an absolutely, terrible prospect. I don't want to expect him to, just come in and stick it up from day 1. But, I think one concern with him, I think, is his size. Even though he is, he's 315, which I think is a good weight, but he is 6'6". And, when you're 6'6", that can be some issues at center position because of leverage, typically with, linemen, especially inside linemen, having the lower leverage, is more helpful in terms of, setting your feet and everything like that, even though I don't think Joe Tippmann has, terrible technique. But at the same time, if it's not perfect, dudes with the better leverage, underneath can just pull up on his pads, just get him out of position. Which I think Joe Tippmann can improve on his technique a little bit, but I still think there's going to be the occasional play where just his leverage is just not that good just due to his size. But at the same time, I don't think that's something that should be like a regular occurrence. I don't think it's going to be the biggest issue in the world. Because I don't think Joe Tippmann, I don't think he's an elite prospect, but he's definitely a day one starter. I think he's someone who can start for this team for a long time and not be, an issue. I think he's a pretty reliable player for the most part. So in round 3, pick 89, I have the Giants selecting Andrew Voorhees, center out of USC. So this is the first of a couple players I have who I actually had in my last mock draft. But I have them. I still think these are players that really fit the Giants. Really fit what the Giants I think are looking to do, especially even after free agency. So yeah, with Andrew Voorhees, he's a guard. I think the Giants definitely still need help in the interior offensive line, since we didn't address that at all in free agency. And with the loss of John Feliciano and Nick Gates, we also lost players who not only did they play center, but also had the ability to play at the guard position. So depth is an issue there still, and I also do think the Giants could still upgrade even at the starting positions. And I think Andrew Voorhees is someone who can do that. I think he's someone who can step in, probably start for us day one at the guard position. I think Andrew Voorhees, he has a lot of similarities to Joe Tippmann. I think, he's a very big guard, which, like I said, with Joe Tippmann, he may have some leverage issues, but at the same time, super athletic. He's someone who can be able to, get out, pull, get to the second level, things of that nature, which, you really like to see. I think having, big, athletic offensive linemen who can go out, wreak havoc, create big holes is going to work very well for the Giants, since, with Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, I think we have some real weapons in the backfield when it comes to running the ball. And yeah, so I think another thing I really like about Andrew Voorhees is I think he's a very versatile player. He's someone at USC, he spent time at guards, he spent time at center, he also spent time at tackle, so I think that's something that can also translate to the NFL. I think he's someone, even though I do think he's going to be a guard at the NFL, I think he's someone, if you needed him, to finish out a game at a tackle or finish out a game at center, I think he's someone who can actually, do that and actually do that pretty effectively. Obviously not like long-term, at a tackle, but, I think he's someone who can do it at pinch, which I do think is very valuable to have versatility at the offensive line position. So in round 4, pick 128, I have the Giants selecting Trey Dean, safety out of Florida. So I do think, even though I do like the Giants at the safety position right now in terms of starters, we have Xavier McKinney, and also we did lose Julian Love, sadly, but I think we did sign Bobby McCain from Washington, who I do think is someone who's able to come in and, at least for this year, do exactly what Julian Love did for the most part. But at the same time, I still think depth at the safety position is something the Giants need, and I think Trey Dean is someone who can come in and be a very good depth piece. I think that fits the scheme very well. So Trey Dean, he's just he's a very big, physical safety who he's best in the box and best at man coverage, which I think could be very beneficial for the Giants. He's someone, he's 6'3", 210, and is a very good athlete as well. He's like I said, he's one of his best attributes is man coverage. So I think he's someone who can come in and we can literally just bring him on and say, cover the tight end, which I do think the Giants very need. Because, if you watch the Giants, especially against teams, for example, like when we played Minnesota, I think both times we played that, TJ Hawkinson had good games against us. We had trouble guarding him one-on-one, and I think Trey Dean's someone who can come in and really help the Giants in that position. I think he's someone who can maybe even cover, running backs at the backfield, or even maybe, put him on a slot receiver or something, every now and then, and be able to do that very well. I also think that Trey Dean, he's also very good, like I said, he's good in the box, so I think he's also good at stopping the run. He's someone who can shoot gaps, get runners in the backfield and stuff like that, which I also think can be beneficial. Wing scheme, with all the exotic blitzes, he likes to bring all these, 5-6 defensive backs on at one time. I think Trey Dean's someone who can come in and maybe even rush the quarterback a little bit with all these exotic blitz schemes we like to run. But I do think the one major knock on Trey Dean is his zone coverage. To be quite frank, he's just not good sitting back in zone, which I do think is really going to limit him in terms of being a starter. But like I said, I think he can be a very good depth piece, rotational piece, where the Giants can bring out in certain situations and be really effective. So overall, I think trading someone the Giants should invest in. I think he's someone who can be good for them. So at round 5, pick 160, I had the Giants selecting Nick Hampton, edge rusher out of Appalachian State. So I do think the Giants have a good pair of young edge rushers in Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeaux, but I think outside of them, we do lack a lot of quality depth. And also, I think you have to consider the fact that Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeaux both spent some time injured last year. So, I think also it's an insurance policy. Depth is, important, as well as, when rushers get tired, you can rotate people on who can, get you the quarterback. Because, who doesn't love sacks? Because I know I love sacks. Pause. Anyway, back to, talking about Nick Hampton as a prospect. I think, he's just a natural, pure pass rusher. He's someone who had a lot of production at Appalachian State, even though, he probably didn't play against the best competition. I think production is production. He's someone who shown he can get to the quarterback. He's not one-dimensional in terms of moves and stuff like that. He has plenty of moves he can utilize, and I think, he's just a pure pass rusher. He's a good athlete, as that rusher, he ran a 4.58, 35.5-inch vertical. So, I think he's someone who has all the tools to just get to the quarterback at the next level. But one thing with Nick Hampton, though, he is quite small. He's around 6'2", like 240, which is not big for an edge rusher at all, which I do think limits him, especially when it comes to, like, run defense. He's going to really struggle to, I think, set the edge at the next level just based off of his size, which I think kind of, makes him just, being a rotational player. Using him on third down, we have all these exotic schemes, where, we can, put him on the edge. And I think he's also someone who at Appalachian State did more than just that. I think he showed in Appalachian State he can, rush up the middle, which, versatility is good. And also, he also so that he can drop back in zone coverage a little bit, which I think, helpful as well, when Wink's exotic schemes, he can line up in the middle, like I said, or he can fake the blitz, go out in coverage, in a little zone, and not be Swiss cheese, which I think is very important. So overall, I think Nick Hampton's a good rotational edge rusher who also offers some other versatility, which I think will fit the Giants' scheme defensively very well. So in round 5, pick 172, I have the Giants selecting Charlie Jones, wide receiver out of Purdue. So when it comes to like kind of outside weapons, tight ends, receivers, things of that nature, Giants were quite busy during free agency. We traded for Darren Waller, we re-signed Darius Slayton, as well as Sterling Shepard. And we also signed guys in the open market such as Paris Campbell, Jeff Smith, and Jamison Crowder. All that, with all that activity, I kind of, think that the chances of the Giants selecting a receiver early in the draft went down quite a bit. Because, it's like, why would you bring in 3 outside guys for receivers if you're planning on drafting one, round 1, round 2, round 3? To me, that just seems kind of redundant. So I kind of think, the Giants still are going to, look to draft a receiver since, guys like Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, they were only really signed on, like 1-2 year contracts, things that we can get out of early. So I think, finding a player who can fill, kind of like the third receiver, fourth receiver role for the foreseeable, for the long term, I think it's something the Giants should still look into. And I think Charlie Jones is someone who can fill that role. I think he's someone. He had a lot of production last year at Purdue. I mean, he had like 110 catches, over 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns. So like I said, absolute baller last year and in college. But I think a little caveat is that was his only real year of production, which I like, usually I like, prospects who can, do it more than once, but I think Charlie Jones is someone who can do that, to be honest with you. One thing, he's a very sure-handed receiver. I think it's probably the biggest thing about him. He's not going to drop passes. He's just, he goes up, catches at the high point, which I think, we've had some problems with issues with drops in the past, and I think he's someone who's not going to have any of those issues. I think Charlie Jones, I think he's a pretty good route runner, but he really excels in the short intermediate passing games, routes like slant routes, inside breakers, drags, things of that nature, which I think fits very well into the Giants' offense. Since I think Daniel Jones, his best when he comes to throwing the ball is slant routes, in breakers, drags. I mean, he loves the short to intermediate passing game, and I think Charlie Jones is someone who can come in and have very good rapport with Daniel Jones from day one, since their strengths are the same thing for the most part. But and also Charlie Jones, he has some straight line speed. He actually ran a 4.43 at 40. So I think he's someone, if you get in the ball, with some open field, he can outrun a guy or two. But I don't think there's enough speed to really stretch the defense. But I think he does have a little bit of big play ability. But one thing I will say is I don't think he lacks a little bit of agility, lateral quickness, which I think can limit himself, making people miss in the open field, or even getting out of his breaks, at the next level. But at the same time, I think he's someone who can be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 at the next level, which I think the Giants could use. I think we could look at getting a long-term 3 or 4, which I think Charlie Jones is someone who can fill that role. So in round 6, pick 209, I have the Giants selecting Isaiah Bolden, cornerback out of Jackson State. So I think one underrated aspect of football in general is special teams, and I think that's something the Giants could definitely improve on last year. I think special teams wise, we weren't very good. I don't think one major part of that was kind of the return game. We know Richie James and his fumbles, as well as the kickoff returns. I can't remember the last time the Giants had an elite kick returner or an elite punt returner. And I do think, those are legit weapons to have on your team that can really help your team. And I think, the Giants should look into getting a legit, weapon back there. And I think Isaiah Bolden is someone who can come in and just do that. He's someone last year, at Jackson State, he had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns and also led the nation with 36.9 yards per return. I know he did play at the FCS level. He didn't play the best competition. But, if your yardage, is your average is 36.9, I don't think that's something that will not translate to the next level. I think, don't get me wrong, I don't think he's going to get, around damn near 37 yards. But he's definitely someone who can come in, have a big return, every once in a while. Actually have a kickoff return for touchdown, which the Giants just don't get. We haven't had for a long time. I do think Isaiah Bolden's someone who can come in and make the roster just based off of his special teams ability alone. Kickoff return, punt returns just alone, which I do think is very valuable. And I think, as a cornerback prospect, I think he's still very raw there. He is good size though. He's 6'1", 193 pounds. Also runs a 4.4 40, so he has the athleticism, the build, but I think his technique's still a little bit of an issue. He's still very raw in that space, as well as he didn't, like I said earlier, he didn't play the best competition, which I think at a position like quarterback is actually going to matter a lot more than it will at the kickoff returner, for example. So I do think if he, with just based off his athleticism and potential alone, I think he can become a quality depth piece, in a couple years as cornerback. But overall, I think he's someone who can be drafted and make the roster alone just based off of his special teams ability, kickoff return ability, really help the Giants, possibly even put up more points by, touchdowns or even just, good field position, which I do think is valuable. So in round 7, pick 240, I have the Giants selecting Malik Cunningham, quarterback out of Louisville. So I know Tyrod Taylor is a very serviceable backup, but he's old, he has 1 year left in his contract, and he's like a glass man. He gets injured quite often. So I do think, the Giants should, draft a quarterback, to be, a future backup, as well as, being a potential backup this year if Tyrod Taylor gets injured like he does quite often. No offense to Tyrod Taylor, but he's injury prone. Anyways, I think Malik Cunningham's someone, he's like almost a perfect backup for the Giants. I think he's someone who has pretty much the exact same, very similar skill set to Daniel Jones, just to like a lesser degree. He's someone, he's best used in the quick passing game, short intermediate passing game, as well as, his best weapon's probably his feet as well. I mean, he's someone who is an electric runner, which I do think is valuable, especially for when you the Giants, you have Daniel Jones, who's a very good runner. I think it's very important to have a quarterback with a similar skill set at the backup position. So, if Daniel Jones goes down, you have someone who can fill in, and you don't have to really change anything with the offense. They can just step in and do the job right away. And I think Malik, he has the experience to be a good backup as well, since he was a 4-year starter at Louisville. So, I don't think he's someone you're going to have to, really worry about, coming in and, just, making a bunch of dumb, stupid mistakes. So I do think, if you keep it simple, he's going to do just fine. But I will say that he doesn't have the best arm, though, so him throwing the ball deep, or even, tight windows may be a little bit of an issue. But at the same time, I still think he's going to be a very serviceable backup. He's someone who I think can come in, run the offense. We can ask him to do the simple things, and he should be just fine. So round 7, pick 243, I have the Giants selecting Tavion Thomas, running back out of Utah. So I do think that, Matt Breida was a good backup for the Giants last year, but we did re-sign him on a 1-year contract. And he's also quite old, so I think, finding a long-term backup, long-term second running back that we can pair with Saquon is something that's going to be important for the future. And I think Tavion Thomas is someone who has a unique skill set, that could, really fit with the Giants want to do, I think, or I should say, should do with Saquon in the future. So Tavion Thomas, he's, your quintessential, thumper type of running back. He's not going to juke you out your shoes. He's not very fast. He's just going to come in there and run you over, which I do think the Giants could use, especially, we don't want, Saquon, he does have a little bit of an injury history. So I think, having him avoid as many big hits, as possible, as many hits as possible, it's going to be best for his future and his longevity. And so I think, Tavion Thomas is someone, he's, like I said, absolute thumper. We can bring him in short yard situations, maybe like bring him on a first down, every once in a while, and also, bring him goal line situations, and they can really excel at that role. But I do think he has some drawbacks. Like I said, he's not very, in fact, he is quite slow as a running back. He runs a 4.78 40, which is quite slow. So I do think it's going to really, limit his usage. But like I said, I think he's like a kind of a situational type of running back, he was going to be very good if we, use him the right way. When you use him in, the short yardage, we're on the goal line, 3rd and 1, just hand him the ball and let him go to work. You know what I mean? He's going to push the pile, get those touchdowns. I do think one thing a little concerning for me, though, is he did have a little bit of a fumbling problem at Utah, but I do think that's something that could easily just be coached up. And also, I think if the Giants, we don't give him too many carries, which I don't think is, much of a concern, since he is the backup running back, the second running back. Like I said, use him, the short yardage goal line type of situations, and he should do very well. As well as, helping Saquon avoid, hits, you know what I mean? Because I think, with him, let's keep Saquon as healthy as possible, and, bring a thumper type of running back who can, take a lot of those hard yardage situations. So round 7, pick 254, I have the Giants selecting Marte Mapu, linebacker out of Sacramento State. So Marte Mapu, I had also, he's another one of the players I had in the last mock draft, and he's a prospect I really actually like a lot. I think he's someone who the Giants can draft, and I think he has potential to be an absolute steal for the Giants if they draft him, the 7th round or 6th round. I think Marte, he's kind of your quintessential tweener type a prospect. I think he's someone at Sacramento State. He was actually their the Big Sky Conference, Defensive Player of the Year last year. Which I think is very, fun fact. I think it's, get people that are, just produce. You know what I mean? He's someone like Marte, like I said, Marte Mapu. He's very versatile. Like I said, he's a tweener. Someone who played both safety and linebacker at the collegiate position. I think he's someone who has a very unique skill set. I think he's going to be, a linebacker, but he's quite small though as a linebacker. 6'3", 210. But I think he's just he's a very good athlete. He's going to be all over the field. And someone we can put him in zone coverage. We can put him in a man scheme. Tell him to cover that tight end, cover that, running back. Maybe even once in a while tell him, oh, cover that slot receiver. And I think he's someone who should be able to do that. Which, it's very rare you're going to find a linebacker who can cover, a slot receiver. But I think Marte Mapu is someone who can do that. And he's someone who did that at the collegiate level and also showed he had the potential to even do that, when he participated in the Senior Bowl. I do think one little concern I have, like I said, is his size. He's 6'3", 210, so he can struggle a little bit in the run game, just shedding blocks and things like that. So I do think, especially early in his career, he's going to be, mainly used in wings defense, third down on the exotic schemes, as well as special teams. When you're a good athlete, I do think that that translates to special teams. You know what I mean? Which I do think the Giants need help on. I think special teams was a little bit lackluster last year, to say the least. But yeah, I think Marte Mapu, someone, like I said, very good wing exotic scheme, rush the quarterback, zone coverage, man coverage. He can do all those things. I just don't think at this point of his career he's not, a long-term, starter, long-term, linebacker, somebody you can put on all three downs. But I do think he has amazing upside. I do think if the Giants developed him right, he can, be an actual starter, be an absolute steal, because you don't usually get starters at the 7th round, but I do think Marte Mapu is someone who has that ability, that has a potential. So I definitely think he's worth drafting for the Giants. And, that's the end of my mock draft. So, I'd love to know what you guys thought about my mock draft. Let me know in the comments, or, also, maybe tell me what you have differently, tell me who you would draft here or there, love to hear that. And yeah, so I also plan on doing another mock draft. That one will probably be pretty much right before the draft, a third mock draft. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. Anyway, thank y'all for watching. Have a blessed day.